Hi, guys. This is Jomar, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about designing high impact AI workflows for go to market systems. I currently consult for Bowtie Funnel, and I created a Bowtie Funnel Lab, and that basically will help myself and other people show, like, okay, this is what I'm building currently. And I think it's never been a better time to create labs. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Jomar Ebalida. I do go to market revenue operations architect, and I'm a systems consultant for AI. I also created a book called Dare to Orchestrate. My career evolution kind of started with events, and then it went to marketing operations, then it went to revenue technology, then it went to enterprise RevOps, and then I also had an engineering approach, which I basically ended up working for as a principal systems engineer in IT department. So I was able to bring a lot of my Bowtie funnel customer lifecycle experience into IT. So I got to really understand like system design documents, maintenance documentation, understand like how does Okta relate to someone's user profile, and kind of like the whole evolution of like, okay, I understand from the business perspective. And now I was able to understand from an IT marketing perspective. And I also have a lot of experience working with startups and then also consulting for I did Marketo consulting for a third party agency. And I also worked at a digital transformation company. And then I started working for enterprise companies for where I helped transform from a technical perspective, like a digital transformation in business perspective, their um, tech stack for revenue. Okay, so right now there's really three different types of agentic solution like categories, which is like personal assistant, co-pilot, and governance. So personal assistant, it's getting really popular, especially with OpenClaw, Hermes. Those are very popular personal assistants. And then I know Gemini, Google's definitely coming up with more of a personal assistant as well. Copilot is more like, hey, you are creating automation with um, cloud cowork, and that has a lot of human in the loop criteria, which is very much more of a like co-pilot, like you're right next to the pilot kind of perspective. And then there's governance, which is more of what we're going to be talking more about today. And if you look at, the aviation industry, they do have control towers orchestration, and that is kind of where the evolution is going. I see a lot of influencers selling personal assistant like Hermes and OpenClaw to small businesses and large businesses. And it's okay if you're like a solopreneur. However, that kind of breaks when you have multiple individuals, especially if you have a team and you're trying. And so that kind of confuses me because I've seen it in the field, in the wild. It does not scale very well. So I always tell people, hey, be very, very cautious about the personal assistance and going into an actual organization, especially when they're very autonomous. There's no human in the loop. It's a wild, wild west, and it gets into your system. It's very scary, actually. So I highly do not recommend that. For personal assistance, like, hey, if you're putting it into like shopping for Nordstrom, if you are doing very like travel a trip, organize your random budgeting for your friend's vacation, that's great. I would highly recommend it. And Copilot's like your regular day-to-day activities. So today I'm also going to talk about like AI influencers versus AI practitioners. There is a difference. So be careful when you go on Instagram before TikTok and all of those. There is a large group of people trying to really commodify the attention that they're trying to get. So they're trying to hype up GitHub repos. They're trying to give you little quick splurts without actually showing you the security concerns, without showing you like the data governance issues. There's just a lot of influencers trying to get rich really quickly with this AI hype. If you're looking at like cryptocurrency, they had NFTs back in the day and they were trying to hype that up. So just be very, very cautious of who you follow and make sure you take everything with a tiny, tiny grain of salt. And then there's a practitioner's reality. That's really where my reality happens. And most of the people that is going to be on this webinar, this is the reality that you're going to face, right? There's going to be, like for fun and in my lab, in my, GitHub lab that I've been creating like a bunch of random agents. I've been don't get me wrong. I've been on my free time and especially on the weekends, I've been downloading GitHub repos from these influencers, trying to see if it's like, okay, is there any sense of correctness in this? It was not correct. There's a lot of errors and a lot of, so you just take everything with a grain of salt. I would not put that into production if you haven't tested it in a sandbox using a sample set of your data set. And then there's a lot of build versus buy. So I'm just going to quickly go over a lot of the context background of where I'm coming from. So when not to buy, right? If you're basically gathering a lot of data sets and you're having to maintain a lot of random data, or if you're having to maintain like workflow operations, like that's a lot of actual manpower. When there's a certain type of maintenance manpower needed to function that system, I would just go ahead and buy that technology. And so, because you don't want to do that maintaining, you need it part of your AI agentic stack. Just like there's a revenue technology stack, there's going to be an agentic AI stack. And so I'll show you guys later what my stack is for like small businesses or for people that you might want to, bring on. Of course, enterprise is going to have a little bit more rigorous technology stack for their agentic building. So when to build, I recommend if it's like more deterministic approaches. And so we're going to cover a lot of those things, like what am I building? What type of tools am I like just using? And right now, I feel like there's a really interesting pricing that people are not really pricing for users anymore. They're really pricing for like outcomes and pricing for tokens usage. So that's very interesting. So there's another thing that's coming to happen is self-hosted versus cloud. So when self-host happened is at first people were trying to go from, self-hosted like technology, and then everyone is trying to go to cloud. Now it's going to be the opposite. Like I feel like now it's kind of going into a more hybrid approach where yes, you are also on the cloud, but you are self-hosting a lot of your LLM providers. You're also self-hosting a lot of like, if you have free LLM models, you're also self-hosting those. And so my thing is I'm mapping agents to the Bowtie funnel and the AI maturity. And so what that means is that I basically found out that I did not like how Hermes or the other type of agents were basically using like roles as an example. They're using roles and ways to segment their agents. What I found out after like trying that approach is that it actually closed out context needed for the rest of the customer lifecycle to function correctly. And so that was like a very drastic part that I found to be an issue. And that's why I moved a lot of my build into more of the customer lifecycle. And for me, I use the Bowtie funnel. That's why the lab is called Bowtie Funnel. And I break it down by ARR maturity. So I don't just go ahead and ask the client, hey, what do you guys need? Because I see a lot of influencers like, just go ask the company what they need agentic solution for or workflows that need to be built out. That's great. If you have like like 300 million ARR and up, and you are, you're sufficing that business, you are already making, over 300 million or 500 million. That's amazing. Then you could go ahead and select, what is the best, type of agentic flow that you should be building. But for me, I really look at the ARR stage. If you are seed to 1 million, I would focus on like personal agent. That's when you can use a Hermes or you can use a basic Copilot. But if you have like 1 to 10 million ARR, you're looking at a little bit more sophisticated type of agentic AI solutions. You're looking at, how are you enriching these leads? Are you creating battle cards for these leads? Your lead to speed type of workflows need to be a little bit more built out and sharpened. And then if you're looking at 10 million ARR, you're looking at more like, continuous like pipeline monitoring. You're looking at seeing if there's an upsell cross-sell opportunity. You're really looking at that whole Bowtie funnel. So Bowtie funnel, if you guys don't know, it's basically a breakdown of the different types of, because before it used to be just a regular funnel, right? It would end in handshake. For this one, it's basically awareness, education, selection, mutual commit, onboarding, retention, and expansion. And so it was really popularized by Winning by Design. But before that, they had ARG too, which also has more of a bow tie funnel shape as well. And then so there's a lot of iterations to this, but for me, how I plan my agents is I map them accordingly to the bow tie funnel, which is a customer lifecycle. And I also merge the ARR maturity stage that they're currently at. And that has a higher EBITDA score. If you guys don't know what EBITDA score is basically what type of operations will the company be more successful for. And that's really important for the business as well. And then so there's a lot of also roles that are coming out within, you know, this type of realm because, I know Clay made GTM engineer as like very popular, but however, now it's starting to evolve a little bit more. And so the GTM engineer is popular, but what I'm seeing a lot of people starting to figure out now is that when you are a GTM engineer or you're a growth engineer or you're a forward deployment engineer or you're a rev workflow engineer, they're all very similar words actually. And their primary objective is to, make money at the end of the day for the whole company and to make sure their AI is operationalized and is efficient for AI. And so for me, what I am seeing a lot too is like a lot of people don't do discovery really well. And I think that's where consultants do really, really well for companies is like if they are if they understand the business and they're doing discovery, they understand like, hey, this is the customer life cycle. This is the different type of agents that go inside the customer life cycle. And so I broke this down into the growth engineer. And here's the primary objective. It requires for that. I really, really gear towards that framework because the bow tie funnel lifecycle is the macro framework. And then the agentic workflows is going to be a micro framework to build things out. And that's where you have context engineer, harness engineering. And so these roles are all very much similar. What I'm seeing right now is more companies are starting to like hire more forward deployment engineers that will work with the go-to-market engineer. And the forward deployment engineers are kind of spread out throughout different departments. And they're kind of very much juniors from my perspective that I've seen in the wild. When I say in the wild, just like clients I've talked to or executives I talk to. So, yep, this is like the different type of GTM roles that are out there right now and that I'm seeing. There could be more. I don't know, but these are the ones I've seen. So today I've really focused on neurosymbolic architecture. And if you guys don't know what neurosymbolic architecture for AI, back in 2025 in December, they actually met up and they said that, neurosymbolic agentic pattern building is actually the gold standard for enterprise. And for a while, most companies don't really understand how to build those. I know there's a few companies, I know Orbi and some other companies that really like situated their entire company to have neurosymbolic agentic patterns as their pattern of choice. And for a while, there wasn't technology that that was sophisticated enough to build these types of neurosymbolic patterns, but now there is. And so, what I'm going to be breaking down is like different types of agentic solutions that you guys can build. And the reason why neurosymbolic is so popular for enterprise is that it has a very low hallucinations. It has auditable workflows. It has real world outcomes. And basically you could answer like, what is it doing? What is it going to do later on? And so back in like before October of 2025, I was using NAN and it was like spaghetti slop on wheels. It was just like, I was getting a migraine looking at all the little arrows and like lines. So I also switched to TypeScript solutioning, so we could talk about that later. But for neurosymbolic, it's really broken down from the first part, which is neural, and the second part, which is deterministic, symbolic part, and the last part, which is neural. So it's an 80-20 split. But what you do is you put the first part as neural, consuming the data, and then being able to be like, okay, what is, how do I organize this? And then the deterministic part, which is 80% of most of the workflow solution, those are going to be like, these are the step-by-step solution. And then the last mile is like, hey, I'm going to either ask for a human in the loop for that as a, hey, does this meet my criteria of output? And then, yeah, put that in a business ledger at the very end. And then that's going to be part of your source of truth for that one workflow. And I believe for me, how I've been great creating these is I've had a business ledger for each AI workflow. So what that means is that every time a workflow runs, I will be taking that information of like, hey, this is what the neural happened. This is what the symbolic part happened. This is what this neural part happened too. And making sure that I have that business ledger, because that business ledger is going to be very important for most companies, like business intelligence in the future. Like you could swap out these LLM models very, very easy. And certain LLM models are actually going to perform better for certain tasks than others. However, that business ledger of that bit and also like that skill set for that workflow is going to be very important, because when a company purchases you, or you go buy a different technology, or you buy a different company, if you're a bigger company and you buy a smaller company, I think in the future, they're going to be like, hey, what type of AI workflows have you done? What are the runs? And can I see the business ledger of that AI workflow so I can see how effective it is? Like, what is the confidence rate of this workflow? I think that's going to be in the future. And I know that cryptocurrencies has that has a certain type of ledger for the wallet. And I can see that truly happening with AI as well. And so there's like 5 components to an AI architecture for execution. There's the LLM neural part, the concept construction, the tools and actions, the control and cognition loop, and then the safety alignment and evaluation. And then there's a core exom, which is more of like the conservative part, making sure that, there's safety gates in place. Is this looking at hallucinations before even sends to the LLM kind of thing? And there's certain types of like GitHub repos that are free that are actually pretty good at doing that. But there is a lot of companies like LangChain and other companies that for enterprise that do that as well. So it is very, like I went in this rabbit hole and I'm coming out of the rabbit hole thinking, wow, there's a lot of exciting things and you can get really, really niche. But the reason why I focus so much in neurosymbolic execution is that it just has a very high confidence rate and a low hallucination rate. And you could probably, you could like ship this to a production instance and be confident, like, hey, like I did that. I put my name on that. Cause for me, like if I'm going to put my name on something, I would at least, want to make sure I provide the best type of workflow or agentic workflow for that client or for the company that I would be working for. And so right now there's also an issue from my perspective when it comes to deploying agentic solution. A lot of people still use NAN, and that's great for one-off instances. If you're the only GTM engineer, use it. Or if you are like very new and you want to use the Claude core management solution, whatever their workflow in like tool is, you could use that too. There's just so many different tools that you could effectively use. I personally use trigger.dev just because I switched from a TypeScript and I let the AI solution basically help me write that. And I would just like, for me, it has a higher sense of reliability. And also the reason why is because once, say there's a node that's missing, like that doesn't trigger, it would restart. So NAN and some other platforms, it would restart the whole trigger flow and it would use up my tokens. So what happens if I do trigger.dev is that it would pause, stop, and then it would basically use it again. And if I went to an enterprise company and they didn't allow trigger.dev, could just self-host it because there is self-hostable. Most of the solutions I select are going to be either, cloud-based or self-host. Obviously, self-host, you have to be cautious that you will have to maintain that. You will have to host that and it will, eventually break one day and you will have to create maintenance documentation and make sure that that platform does not break if you self-host. There's always a chance that self-hosting, something will break eventually. If you're lucky, probably not during the stint of your time there, but make sure it's properly documented. So the reason why I also switched from GitHub to more of an NAN solo also is because just like the auditing, and I could work with multiple types of individuals. Like I can work with a GTM engineer. I can work with multiple GTM engineer and a forward deployment engineer from like if a different department decided to give me an individual, then I could basically get that type of support from a different person. And I would segment them off in different GitHub repos. So it's basically getting that development heavy, iterative instance from multiple players and making sure it goes to a sandbox, it goes to an environment, it goes to a gateway, and then it goes into the different types of tools. So for me, I branch all of my GitHub repos, and then I do empirical reviews for all of the sandboxes. And then I go to a staging environment that has the most up-to-date information from the production. And then I put everything right now in Supabase staging. That's for most small companies. You can use Databricks has a lot of good tools. You can use Snowflake. You can use really any SQL database vector. I just use this one because it was self-hosted and it was, free 99. Who doesn't like that? And a lot of people use Slack as staging. I know the old CEO of Twitter came up with a new type of Slack competitor, but for now I'm using Slack because it is widely used within all of the different types of enterprise or mid-size or small companies because, Salesforce acquired them. Probably one of the best acquisition in my opinion because of the chat feature. And now a lot of people are using that as a human in the loop. So once it goes to the staging environment, it also goes into production. And so when there's a production for trigger.dev, I do have a production hook. So even in that like TypeScript trigger, I have a sandbox, I have a staging, and then I have a production environment when it comes to setting up a trigger. So when it goes into Zod, which is a drizzle schema, and that looks at, it basically audits certain things as well, and to make sure it's safe. And then I go to CloakPipe. So it's a PII tool, which basically cloaks your personal data. And for me, that's really important as you are creating AI workflows across the customer lifecycle. So if you go from awareness, that doesn't have that much PII data because that's public information. But as you go into selection and you go into mutual commits, onboarding, retention, those start to have higher PII data because you're taking personal information from your customer. And so that tends to have, PII data that you might want to shield from LLMs, especially because you don't know what they're going to do with that data. And I would also be cautious about a lot of small businesses that are using a lot of agentic AIs from Claude or ChatGPT. They're giving a army of AI agents to small businesses, and they don't have people that they can hire that are AI architects, and they're just giving away their personal data and workflows to these big LLM providers. If a big company like that gives you something for free, you're actually the product, or your data is the product of theirs. So they're basically taking that from you. And then so it goes to Vercel as a gateway. So Vercel, a lot of people would think it's just like a hosting platform. I use it as a gateway to actually push a lot of the trigger.dev or a lot of information back into like a way where I can send it out to other technology like Slack. And then I also put an LLM switchboard. So in the middle of my stack, so I can I could use different types of LLM providers, especially if, I think now a lot of companies are going to be very stringent on price of LLMs for different workflows. Because I know a lot of big consulting firms, they're basically using a lot of tokens using Fable 5 to make PowerPoint presentations from PDFs, right? Like a lot of people are just max tokenizing them. So in the future, probably in a few months, I think, because everything is just happening super fast. Everything is going to be more stringent. There's going to be a closer eye on what LLM tools you're using for each workflow, and is it price conducive to that particular workflow. And then I use Langfuse, which is one of my favorite tool, and it basically logs trace all of the LLMs. So you have that black box is open and you see what's inside the LLM provider. And then I put Supabase Productions, and that is where I put all the logs of each of the AI activities. So I use Langfuse to basically open the box, and then I put Supabase to put all the things back inside a different table so it's all organized and clean. And then I use Slack as human in the loop to basically get ideas from different types of, verification. If it's hey, I approve of this, no, I do not approve of this, and why don't you approve of it, right? I'm going to just show you guys in my lab so you guys know. You guys can also access this. This is all free. I decided to just give everything for free. I don't really have a particular need for like gatekeeping anything. If anything, sharing is caring. So for Neurosymbolic, I basically started like here is like an actual way of how to use the Neurosymbolic agentic pattern building. And what I did is I separated all the first mile neural, middle is deterministic. Like I said, last one's neural. And if you look, a lot of the RevOps for forecasts and win loss churn signal, these parts are going to be a little bit more heavy in the neural part. So that's why they have a 10-80-10 split, 80%, 20% of neural, but they're split against each of the very end. And so if this is the middle part, and this one talks about like the CRM loss, attribution, what not to, why not, and native pattern callouts, win loss. And it also shows you the switchboard that I made, and that shows you which type of agent would probably best for that particular type. And I actually just researched a lot of different types of models, what they would be good at, and then put it inside an LLM and then let them decide which one based on the different details I put into it. So, I mean, you could test it yourself. That's the best part about this lab. You could test everything yourself. And so there's also guarded ones, which is a little bit less than more symbolic, less. And as you get more symbolic, your percentage of confidence rate for each of these workflows actually increase. So that's a great part. And then, yep. So there's more deterministic ones. These are very much more straightforward. You don't even need an AI. Some people are like, I need an LLM for everything. No, you don't. There's things that you don't really need an LLM for. You can just like straight shoot it, and you could use. And if you are to use it, you could have it run like at the very end, because like call brief, I have it like there's none LLM at the very beginning, but there's an LLM at the very end, which is like going to transcript the API, write a CRM AI API, and that uses like the most like not the smartest model for. I'm not gonna say that because each model is good at certain things, but a very cost effective LLM model. And so I actually just, put this all together for you guys. I've been putting these up together. Like I've just been shipping as many things as I can to help, but I just haven't really like talked it out to anyone just because I've been having so much fun building, honestly. And I also did the marketing side as well. For Neurosymbolic, I only had paid ads because a lot of the actual AI workflows, you don't really need like that much neural, not that much LLM for the beginning part, but you might need it for the very end. So an example is like SEO. I made this one, and this one's also in my GitHub repo. You guys can have it. It's all free. Everything's free. So yeah, that one basically looks at your daily, weekly audit. It basically scrapes from a third party platform, might be for free, that's an SEO. We can actually go ahead and look at it. All right. There's so many. Actually, it really depends on what your use case is. So this one, I use data for SEO. It's an on-page audit, and I scraped that. And then most of these, I started realizing I should really build a system design document for each one, like a topography. I hope I built it here. No, I didn't, but I will edit all of these to have a topography. Here's a lead enrich and source score route, which basically leads enrich ICP scoring, read loud. And for this one, I don't even use a spaghetti AI anymore. I rarely use NAN. And if I did use an NAN, there was a moment in time before October where everyone was just dumping NAN workflows for everything. I would just sometimes look at that, and I created a skill that converted that NAN skill into an actual trigger.dev. So I didn't have to like overcomplicate it. And then I would basically use the neurosymbolic pattern to then layer that on top. So then I'm not starting from scratch. And then, use my taste and judgment. Taste and judgment is actually super important. Like how, like how is this going to scale, right? How is this, does this even look good? So hopefully you guys are able to, look at that reference of Neurosymbolic and see how the different splits of the LLM pattern, what LLM I'm using, potential tools that you could potentially use for each of these agents. So for me, like an example is, this is actually, so lead enrichment and routing pipeline. If anyone's interviewing for any job, this is one of the like assignments they give you. I'm not even joking. Like this, I've like when I was curious, so I started like talking to people and talking to recruiters and talking to companies, and a lot of people use the lead enriched score route. Like probably out of the 35 interviews that I've done, probably 80% wanted me to rebuild this one, and it was getting like so annoying in terms of like, okay, that's like a very easy one. And so this is the one I've been using, and it has a 100% rate of saying you passed this technical challenge. So if you want to win, or if you want to pass one of those technical challenges, this is the one I used. So usually they do like 30 mock-up leads. They give you a mock-up lead and they're like, hey, can you enrich these? So most of the companies that I've interviewed for, they actually want you to, they just give you a list and can you, make this, use API, use your LLM skill. So most of the enrichment is really not that much LLM at all. If anything, probably towards the very end for routing you might need. But these type of tools, let's see, for this one, I basically they give you the fields, they give you like columns, they give you proprietary category field by. And so what I did was basically, got all the fields. I use 3 technologies, I believe. Like you can basically just stack all the data enrichment tools that you want and have trigger.dev basically enrich until you can't say anything else. And then if you can't find these enrichment, go search the web, crawl the web, and tell me if you find all this information. And then that's basically how I do the enrichment part. And then the routing rules for the very end, it goes into like, oh, how are the routing rules for this? Is the routing rules going to be for existing customers? Is it going to be for industries? Is it going to be by ARR stage of that company, like company size? Or is there a particular partner that would be interested? And then making sure you segment, the actual customer versus net new. So you're not like sending a net new to an existing customer or existing customer to a net new business development rep. So this is one you could download. And even if you see an agent on GitHub, I would highly, highly, highly recommend to just make sure you take a sample set of your current data set from like either CRM or whatever tools that you're currently trying to create an agent for, and make sure you could spin up a free Superbase like workflow. Like here's one. You can just spin these suckers up and then just simulate, like have an identical twin of your stack, and that will basically help you create like an environment. So just make identical twins of each of your development stages in your API, and you can look into like their help documentation for that. And then you can make an identical twin of that environment that you're in, and then plug in your agent so you have a higher threshold of seeing if that works or not. So this is the build enrichment routing pipeline. After you build something too, you realize, oh, I could have done that better. And one of the things I've done better for lead enrichment is I actually created like an AI staging of data. So once new data comes into my platform, like a HubSpot, it goes into a Superbase, and that basically is the staging, like the waiting room at a receptionist desk. And then I dump like all the enrichment providers I have. And then once it gets enriched, I push it into a Slack channel, like do Vercel through like trigger.dev do Vercel through Slack. And then I ask the human in the loop, is this okay? And once that is okay, then that staging basically pushes into the CRM. So you have like a safe space for your agentic solution, for your AI to basically work without you being nervous that am I hurting anything? Like, am I hurting my entire instance? So like the reason I did that is because I actually, when I was buying technology for Big Law, a lot of their data enrichment had a staging environment. So I just borrowed that element and then applied it to my AI solution. So for this lead enrichment and routing, this one I use Bitscale and I use NRev to basically enrich my LLM. And so that basically helps, if NRev doesn't have it, does Bitscale have it? And if Bitscale doesn't have it, does Clay have it? And then if not Clay, then can you browse the web? So sometimes what I do is because I'm very cost sensitive to a lot of like the tools, especially for my clients. What I do is I put that most expensive enrichment at the very end. So if I don't need it, I don't use it. And so that really, really helps. And then this one also scores. I totally forgot I put a scoring rubric. And so the scoring rubric is a skill that I also put, and it's symbolic, and you can change that as well. What I'm seeing also in the industry is a lot of people are having a very difficult time creating skills that can work in a co-pilot and governance. So you want that consistency, because when you score a certain lead, you make sure that that scoring is consistent within all your revenue technology stack. And it's also like those type of skill is also consistent in your governance of how those trigger.dev or and how those workflows are working with the LLM, and also like how individual co-pilot people are using like Claude Code or Claude Coward. That skill is consistent. So what I'm seeing right now is there's a lack of consistency happening with different skills and different like SOPs. And so I would highly recommend to put all of that in GitHub and then have that as your central of truth, so you can push it within all these other platforms. So you have a consistent scoring rubric. You have a consistent way of, explaining your product to new customers. You have a consistent way of explaining your retention or your retention like battle cards to individuals. So from the scoring perspective, I highly recommend making a skill or like a very defined way, and it has to be consistent, and making sure if you are scoring in other platforms that that is also accounted for. So I've seen that a lot, and I've heard a lot of people that are in revenue enablement, sales enablement have a very difficult time because everyone's messaging is so like wild west, because it's not consistent and there's no center of excellence for messaging, scoring, or like branding. So that is what I consider also to be very problematic. And probably I've been using GitHub as that. Probably I can show you some other day. But and then there's routes. So it scores, it routes to the correct place. And so yeah, that does that one. And then you can download that as well. I also did a few like both and SEO agents. There's more. I'm probably going to be posting just like a bunch of agents throughout the month. And I also made a Neurosymbolic agent, which is more of just like it looks at your agent, and I was like, how can you make this more Neurosymbolic? And then there's a competitor agent. So there's a lot of different agents in here that you can play around with. But like I said, no matter if it's me, if it's someone else that you like, I would never take someone like just take it right away and send it to a client. Really bad practice. Make sure you test that environment. Make sure you have an identical twin of their environment or set it up so you can test that. And then make sure you do change management accordingly. So what does change management look like for AI? It's a little different. So what I always recommend is like, if you have like a Slack, like I've been testing this one for shits and giggles. This one, so like here's a daily writing one just for fun. I wanted to like test it out. Each one will have channels. I highly recommend doing channels for each of your different types of workflows, and making sure that the team can actually see you interact with the Slack channel. Like if you approve and deny, get like that lets them that shows them like how they should be interacting with your agent. So for governance, I use Slack as the center of like truth for communication perspective for the human in the loop. But I make sure that the first thing is like you want to expose them to like how to interact with your agent. And so the first thing is like, hey, how do I show them how this actually works? And so I would open the Slack channel for the first like day or a first week and show them how I would interact with it. Like, this is when a new lead comes, this is what it would look like, right? And then basically taking their regular day and their new AI day, because there's like a new AI way of doing things where they don't have to go open a million tabs, go and click and clack at like HubSpot. Then they have to go to what do you call it, Salesforce, then they have to go to SalesLoft, then they have to go to like Zoom Info, then they have to go to like everything. They can just go on their Slack, open up, hey, like talk to a chat, or it's for me, I've already created a cron job that would automatically send them, different types of leads that they have, different types of accounts they need to be looking out for. And so those are different types of ways you could do change management from the get-go. It's just exposing your Slack channel and showing them like, hey, this is how you interact with your AI for governance. And I'm not saying let's stop them from in this working on Claude Cowork or Open AI's ChatGPT. Like, let them have all these Copilot solutions tools, but make sure you control the governance. That's that split I'm telling about. Like, let them have that Copilot to make their certain jobs efficient, but to the jobs that really matter, like if you're talking to a customer, if you're talking to a partner, and if your brand is on the line, I highly recommend to make sure that is centralized, organized, and that has a certain type of governance applied. Because everything that leaves your company now, before, you were able to kind of monitor it. Now with AI, it's like everyone's just dumping AI everywhere. So, or content everywhere, and it's putting your brand and logo name on it. So yeah. And then the second part would basically be doing workflows. I mean, I always include for change management too, besides opening my Slack channel and showing people, always have like 2 to 3 individuals that you would, or one, if your company is really small, for that department and team, and make sure you work them throughout the workflow and they get the approval. And it's like, hey, let me run like 10 to 15 outputs from this workflow in a staging environment, and making sure you start creating that business ledger from, that workflow. So you could at least get a higher confidence rate score, even higher confidence rate, or even if when you push it to production. Because then when you push it into a sandbox and let that like staging environment of 1 to 2 weeks, let that simmer a little so he can get really excited and he can hype up the rest of the team. You always want to pick someone that's like very positive, very tech forward, and you always want to leave. If they have say if they have a stand up every week, you want to make sure that that person gets like 5 minutes. You talk to their manager, you give them 5 to 10 minutes of that time, or whatever, 5 minutes. I think some stand-ups are 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Too much, but like 5 minutes, and give them that time to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how it's increasing, our efficiency rate, our operational rate. And this is how it's also increasing EBITDA if you're going to talk to your like CFO or COO. And so that's going to help motivate the team, and it's going to create a little bit of momentum going forward. And then once you do like one for a department or team, like Agentic Flow, and you push it into production, I would also recommend like a little bit of an office hours and making sure it's like, hey, the first week, these are how many outputs we've had. This is how many human in the loops did we have. Just basically gut check all of them. And make sure like, hey, did you really mean to approve this? And making sure you check that business ledger. Because at the end, I think that business ledger for each of these AI workflows is going to be a very prized commodity for your company. Because that no matter if that person leaves, that business ledger stays. And also, if you get bought out, that business ledger becomes very, very important from an efficiency perspective. So yes. And then after you do those workshops, I would probably recommend making sure every week after that, until it gets really good, to look at the drifting that happens with the LLM, because there's a lot of drift that happens. So this is one cycle of an AI workflow. What I do is I also create a neurosymbolic governance around each of my AI workflow. as well. So I haven't built out that in my GitHub. I will probably launch that by the end of this week, where it basically has one loop that's always, human in the loop. And then there's a second loop, which is a governance loop that also has neurosymbolic pattern. So that one checks for more like LLM drift. Sometimes your LLM likes to drift and from its actual goal. So that will basically help corral it. Think of it like those things from bowling where they just go flow and like they stop those bumpers. That will help it guide to the right place. So that pops up once in a while. If it's going a little, if the bowling ball is starting to go a little over there, it goes whoosh-ah, and it goes straight, and then you get a strike. So yeah, I've explained one of those workflows. There's so many other ones. Another one that I also highly recommend that I put it in my lab was also like AI agent autonomy, like how you're organizing your folder structure is really important too. I know this one I like looked at Vercel released their folder structure. So just make sure a lot of people are also using folder structures to decrease on token usage as well, and making sure like, hey, is this the right type of folder structure? Making sure that you have all these type of folder structure for each of your agents makes it look super clean and very like that your closet looks cleaner and has drawers and folders for everything. So I always recommend that as part. That's free on my lab. I also put like GTM stack on my lab. These are all free solutions. I think it's really important to just be part of a community that's always willing to share. And I put like certain types of GTM tools that I really like, as well as like the website. And I also created like there's a lot of skills that people are doing too, like agent skills. I've just been like hoarding AI agent skills for a while, and I realized, you know what, it's better to just make my own skills. But it's always good to start with something than nothing and just tweak it as you go along the way. It's an art. This is an art. So you're almost like a creative artist doing these things. Besides the skills, I also have, like I said, the Neurosymbolic ones, and I will also be posting a lot more. Like I'm going to have a link here, like another column that will basically push to the right tool. And what I'm going to do is like duplicate, like have a GTM like clone of what instances. Like Salesforce is a very popular CRM that you can just duplicate as part of like simulate what it would look like and have the different types of data fields and API fields flow. Other than that, I am done with sharing all my cool agents. I mean, they're all for free. And I feel like everyone's also going to start having GitHubs. They're like the Pinterest of GTM workflows now. Like everyone has a Pinterest board, like for parties, but you're curating one now for your company. So there's that. Well, you guys have a great day.
Thank you so much, Jomar. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much. I mean, I really love this. I mean, I'm really passionate about Neurosymbolic, Agentic AI pattern building, and go-to-market systems. It's definitely a mouthful, but I'm very happy about like, at first I was really sad about like, if I was to send out an NAN and it would break, an NAN workflow and it would break on my clients, I get really sad because I'm like, why am I sending terrible work? Like that's like really like it hurts my moral stuff. I don't know. It hurts me saying, oh, like, am I sending like terrible work? But now I'm like, I'm a lot happier sending work that I know it's a lot more durable.
I absolutely love it. I also love the cheat code if you ever get asked in an interview, or you could probably use that Git when you get asked in your job as well to do.
Yeah,
I want to point out that also is good for jobs.
Yeah, it's good for jobs. Like, I mean, most of the workflows I did were like job interview questions, right? Like, how did you do this, etc. Like a lot of people want to prove now or show you, like, how did you do this? They want proof, and here's the proof.
I love it.